I'm a bad motherfucker.
Didn't you get stabbed in the eye?
Very
you realize what a
personal for
severe
you.
accusation that they stabbed me in the eye? A person who's been stabbed.
Keaton, you're a dad. Take note. And back to us.
All right, so changing gears here
Take
a little.
note of what? That was a weird one.
all those parenting notes just now. Did you not hear all of the parenting notes?
Oh, okay. Got it. Oh, I thought that was a super. Oh, no. I thought that was a super chat.
It was a super chat.
It was a super chat in response to the others. Okay, got it. Okay, got it.
It was all, yes, it was all one, multiple super chats, but about parenting. SS has a lot of depth. Thank you, SS.
Oh, those are all from the same guy. Okay, got it. All right. Sorry, I misheard it. Okay, I apologize.
All right.
All right, this is Russell Dobular sitting in for Jimmy, who's performing in El Paso, Texas tonight, joined by awesome dad, Keaton Weiss, dad of the year.
Yeah.
His kids show no signs of trauma, at least when I met them that one time.
That's when
Give
you
it
make
time.
it
There's another baby coming. Might change.
There is another baby coming, although one of my guys might be
this guy is like a fucking
anti-Semitic.
sea pod in a hard breeze.
Yeah. I think one of my guys is an anti-Semite. I don't know why I'm saying that, but something came up earlier in the show that made me think of him.
Oh, really?
How maybe part of his behavior is coded anti-Semitism. I'll have to recall it. Yeah.
Okay, so this is a little bit of a change in tone. So if you're wondering why the media, the political class, is so intent on convincing you that anyone speaking out against this horrific crime against humanity being committed on a daily basis by Israel, why they are working so hard to convince you you're going to believe us or your lying eyes. It's because the things that your lying eyes are going to be seeing going forward as Israel goes into Rafah and as evidence of their war crimes emerge from areas that they've moved out of, they don't want you looking at that. And if you do look at it, they don't want you to think it means what it obviously means. So just warning you, some of the footage in this story is very upsetting. Some of the facts of this story are very upsetting.
Before we get to the upsetting stuff, someone in the chat guessed it. Watermelon. That's it. You're right. My kid loves watermelon. One of my kids' favorite food is watermelon. And I thought maybe he's anti-Semitic. Yes.
Right. It could
Thank
be.
you, whoever that was in the chat.
Could be.
Yes.
I mean, if he was eating watermelon and calamari, that would settle it.
Right. And it's case closed. Yeah.
Almost 400 bodies have been found in mass grave in Gaza hospital, says Palestinian Civil Defense. Authorities in Gaza have concluded their search of mass graves at a hospital in the south of the Strip and said they have uncovered a total of 392 bodies, including some still wearing surgical gowns. Sounds like Hamas fighters, huh? It's Hamas fighters out there in their surgical gowns. Speaking at a Thursday news conference, an official from the Palestinian Civil Defense in Gaza said workers have identified 165 bodies at the Nassir Medical Complex in Khan Yunis, following the withdrawal of Israeli forces from the area earlier this month. They are still examining the remaining 227 bodies to determine their identities, Mohammed al-Magyar said at the news conference in Rafah. We found 3 mass graves, the first in front of the morgue, the second behind the morgue, and the third north of the dialysis building, he added. The Israel Defense Forces said any suggestion that it had buried Palestinian bodies in mass graves was false, and that a grave at the Nassir complex was dug by Palestinians in Gaza some months ago. The Gaza Civil Defense acknowledged that around 100 bodies were buried in graves at the Nassir Hospital before the IDF operation there. The Palestinian Civil Defense also showed graphic images on a TV screen at the news conference. CNN has reviewed the photos that appear to show several almost unrecognizable bodies at the complex. The images also include bodies of decomposed children. So this is some footage of a mother finding the body of her child. This is from Syed Mohammed Marandi. She recognizes the body of her son, who was executed by Israeli Nazis and dumped along with hundreds of other Palestinian men, women, and children in mass graves at the Nassir Hospital in Khan Yunis. The Nazi regime must be completely dismantled. So let's see.
نبيل افتح البوكسر انا شوف مخطط شوف لنا بجاكيته فيه اشي هذا مخطط لا مش اي طيب شو هو ابني نبيل والله نبيل جاكيته يما
خذ الكادولة بس عشان
جاكيته
He recognizes him by his jacket. He realizes it's his son.
قلبي يما والله انا خليته ابني قلت لكم ابني هنا قلبي والله خليني ابوسه
And this scene is playing out for thousands of families right now in Gaza. And in the end, we can only speculate. I believe that Israel is committing a genocide to prevent the backlash that will come from this population if they're allowed to live. Anything, Keaton?
Well, yeah. I mean, I had our friend Nick Cruz over over at RBN. He was on our show on Wednesday, and he was saying to me, because he knows this issue much more thoroughly than I do. I mean, to their credit, they've been on top of all of these kinds of stories for years. And what he was saying is that a lot of times the IDF will target civilians alongside fighters because of the pretty obvious blowback that comes from if you kill a fighter but leave, 4 of the fighters' sons alive. Well, those sons are very likely to grow up and become fighters themselves.
Exactly.
Right. And so what we're talking about now, that's what Nick said. I trust him on that because, like I said, he knows this issue much more in depth than I do. But assuming that's true, and I have no reason to doubt his word on that, because it's backed by years of research he's done into this issue, then this is what we're seeing is that concept multiplied by the tens of thousands now.
Right.
And look, I mean, yeah, I think that's a part of it. I think ultimately this is about lands. If you look at a map of Israeli land and the encroachment that they have made onto these occupied zones throughout the years, it's very obvious that they want to paint the entire block of land blue and white.
Right.
And they just needed an excuse to do it.
Right.
And October 7th was that excuse.
Right.
And now here they go. Right. I mean, I think that's probably the prime, political motivator. But of course, at a certain point, you have to double and triple down because of what you just said and what Nick told me, which is that if you leave survivors, those survivors grow up to become fighters.
Right.
Why wouldn't they?
Right.
Right. And I don't wish violence upon people, but this becomes an inevitable cycle that was started by the state of Israel. No question about it. There's no question who's at fault here.
Well, the woman, her first impulsive reaction, the first thing she said was something to the effect of, "I swear I will shoot them." And then she says, "I want to die." So yeah, I mean, what's your first? This is why, even where you have cases as in the Hamas charter, where they make statements that are clearly anti-Semitic, you have to understand that that's in a context of their understanding of Jews are Israelis, Zionists, and frankly, 80%, according to polling, 80% of diaspora Jews, of Jews outside Israel, support the state of Israel as what it is. Some of them want a ceasefire, some of them want a two-state solution, but about 80% believe that Israel as a Jewish state should exist. And when you say that, you're saying you support the premise of an apartheid ethno-state. You support that.
Of course.
So it's a little hard to blame people for feeling that those things are synonymous. Now, clearly, given me and Keaton's position, given Aaron and Max's position, given many other Jews' position, given Jewish Voice for Peace and many other Jewish-led pro-Palestine organizations, those things are not synonymous. But damn, the Zionists have done a good job convincing people that it is synonymous. And when people like us speak out, they attack viciously. You're like the Jews who helped the Nazis in the camp. You're self-hating. They hate nothing more than a Jew who hasn't drunk the Kool-Aid on this. A CNN stringer who visited the scene on Sunday and Monday saw several decomposed bodies in surgical gowns. Photos CNN has reviewed show several bodies still wearing hospital wristbands. CNN footage also shows several other children's bodies decomposed in the complex. AlBundyShoes said the civil defense witnessed the presence of children's bodies in the mass graves at the Nassir Medical Complex, which proves crimes of genocide. While the group said it is still examining the bodies, they suspect at least 20 civilians were buried alive in the complex, but it did not explain how it knows this or offer proof while it continues to investigate. AlBundyShoes also claimed that there had been cases of executions of patients who had been receiving treatment at the hospital. He said several bodies were found with gunshot wounds to their heads and injuries to their bodies. CNN is unable to verify these claims and cannot confirm the causes of death of those whose bodies are being unearthed, and it is unknown who is responsible for their deaths. AlBundyShoes added that Israeli forces buried several bodies in plastic bags, quote, at a depth of 3 meters, which made them decompose quickly. The occupation deliberately concealed evidence of its crimes in the Nassir complex by changing the plastic shrouds more than once, he claimed. Video recorded by CNN shows bodies wrapped in 3 different colored shrouds, white, black, and blue. In response to a question from CNN about the mass graves, the IDF shared a link to a post on X from its international spokesperson, Nadav Shoshani, who commented on a video of Palestinians digging up a mass grave at the complex. Shoshani wrote in the post, quote, misinformation is circulating regarding a mass grave that was discovered at Nassir Hospital in Khan Yunis. The grave in question was dug by Gazans a few months ago. This fact is corroborated by social media documentation uploaded by Gazans at the time of the burial, as seen in the video below. Okay, so the Gazans say they did have a grave of about 100 people, and this is very typical Israeli bullshit, right? They're deflecting to that to muddy up the question. Okay, so where'd the other 300 bodies come from? Asked, as long as they can create confusion around an issue, they're happy. That is their intent.
Right, because the media will always make the best possible assumption about them and the worst possible assumption about the people in Gaza. Exactly.
Asked about the mass graves at Nassir Hospital at a United Nations briefing in New York on Thursday, Stephanie Dujarric, a spokesperson for the UN Secretary General, said the organization has called for an international investigation, but said how that will take place is unclear at this time. Quote, investigators, wherever they come from, would need to have access to Gaza, which would require the permission of a number of countries, including Israel. Amnesty International has also called for an investigation into the mass graves at Nassir Hospital and another hospital in Gaza, the Al-Shifa Medical Complex, saying there was an urgent need to grant access to independent human rights investigators. Quote, mass grave sites are potential crime scenes, offering vital and time-sensitive forensic evidence. They must be protected until professional forensic experts with the necessary skills and resources can safely carry out adequate exhumations and accurate identification of remains. When approached for comment, the IDF also referred CNN to a previous statement about claims that Israeli troops had buried scores of Palestinians in a mass grave within the grounds of the hospital, saying they are baseless and unfounded. Okay, so this is Ralph Nader, who I guess got the message that he's never going to be welcomed back into the tent and has decided he doesn't need to kiss Biden's ass anymore. Stage 2 of Israel's genocidal war is emerging. Mass graves are being discovered. Torture of abducted Palestinian hostages thrown in Israeli prisons, and reports of selected human organ extractions from fresh Palestinian corpses in Gaza. Intelligence agencies report all this in their morning briefings to President Biden. Still, he sticks to his master Netanyahu and makes the American taxpayer pay $14 billion more for Netanyahu's slaughter of Palestinian children, women, and male civilians. So this footage is really remarkable. A reporter asked who we call Fat Sagar at the State Department what they think about the mass graves here.
The Gaza Civil Service today held a press conference this morning, which was televised, and they said that evidence showed that many of those pulled out from the 3 mass graves that they found, including children, were tortured before being killed. Some even showed signs of being buried alive, along with other crimes against humanity that they accuse Israeli forces of. They called for an independent forensic investigation. This administration repeatedly says that it asks Israel, the Israeli government, to investigate itself. As a mediator for peace between Israelis and Palestinians, how does it ever make sense that the United States asks the accused party to examine itself and provide reports that you have previously said that you actually trust? What's wrong with an independent scientific forensic investigation? I mean, if the results of such an independent investigation prove the accusations to be baseless, then that would be in Israel's favor, wouldn't it?
So, as it relates to the continued reporting about, we're seeing about these mass graves, first National Security Advisor Sullivan spoke a little bit about this yesterday, but we continue to find these reports incredibly troubling, and that's why yesterday you saw the National Security Advisor call for this to be thoroughly investigated. We want to see these facts looked into, and simultaneously we're continuing to press the government of Israel for more information. The IDF has spoken to this in some sense already, but we are continuing to press them for additional information.
But why not have an independent forensic scientist, which the Palestinians are calling for?
We think this does need to be thoroughly investigated, but in terms of the modality, we continue to want to see some additional information from the government of Israel before
But
we
you're
make
asking
other
the accused
assessments.
to investigate itself.
We believe that through a thorough investigation, we can get some additional answers. We're also hoping to continue to get more information from the government of Israel on this.
But
Go ahead.
On the humanitarian side of this
Okay, so that is just fucking insane. Well, hey, we're asking Israel for more information about its war crimes. So don't you think an independent investigation would be a good idea? Well, we're asking Israel. Keaton?
I mean, I hate to keep saying the same thing over and over again, but I feel like I have to because I have to say what's on my mind. This is the shit they were saying in early November of last year. after the Jabalia refugee camp, right? I mean, this is the same kind of gaslighting they were doing, 4 or 5 months ago, 6 months back. That I won't say they stopped doing it, but we didn't see as much of it because there was definitely a change in the way that was reported on by, mainstream outlets. Like I said, even MSNBC had turned on them. CNN has done some good investigations in the Gaza Field Hospital. That was one big one. They just did one on the Flower Massacre, which YouTube said recently to us was not safe for people under 18 to watch on YouTube, even though it's a CNN segment that aired for the general public on TV, right? So it just feels like we are back to square one in terms of having to knock down these things over and over again. I mean, we got to know this guy and the other guy, the vampire-looking guy, Matthew Miller, right after October 7th, and we saw them over and over again. Yeah, right, exactly, yeah. And we saw them, over and over again. There's those first few weeks after October 7th, really through the end of the year. We stopped seeing them as much, I think, because perhaps they became less confident in the fact that they could just gaslight like that in broad daylight. They started dodging questions more than just answering it like that. Well, we're going to ask Israel about it, and we'll get back to you. Now we're seeing this all over again. It is really a bizarre thing to see, and it's very frustrating, and it's very maddening. But we just have to do what we did back then. That's all. That's all I can really say. I mean, it's repetitive, but it's repetitive because this timeline has literally begun to repeat itself in a very eerie way.
It is just incredible that they can get up there and say something like that. And it is starting to come apart. And again, it is very reminiscent of the Vietnam era, where you had similar kinds of scenarios where you'd have spokespeople for the government saying things that were clearly just absolutely insane and completely divorced from reality. And that began to really undermine faith in those institutions. And that's an undermining we've never recovered from. Americans used to believe in their government. They never have again after Vietnam. There have been times when they believed in charge more than others, but they've never, as a whole, believed in the government again after that era. And they're doing their best to stamp out whatever faith in the government is left with episodes like this. So, AOC, look, brave AOC. How are news outlets dedicating wall-to-wall coverage to campus protests, but not to the discovery of mass graves in Gaza of people with their hands tied and clothing stripped? Why do we not know more? Where are the journalists and resources being dedicated to that story? Well, you know who could probably answer that? This guy. Amara Nassir says maybe you can ask him about the mass graves. So how about you withdraw your endorsement of Joe Biden? How about you stop running cover for Joe Biden? How about you direct those questions to Joe Biden? Trump is not the president, right? He's not the president. Joe Biden is the president. So isn't he responsible for what the government does now? So why aren't you calling him out?
Well, you saw Ilhan Omar at the Columbia protest the other day. Right. AOC was there too. I don't know if she was there today or yesterday.
I saw a little footage of that. Yeah.
But she was there recently. And this is another kind of infiltration, right? There's the Zionist infiltration going undercover, right, as saboteurs. But this is a different kind. This is a co-opting of these protests here, right? Just like, the Zionists are there to disguise themselves as radical, anti-Semitic sort of troublemakers, agitators, even terrorists. Some of them go as far as to say, Shai David I, where he called them terrorists. These are literally terrorists, right? So that's one kind. But then the other kind of infiltration is this, where AOC shows up. You have obviously, members of the squad show up. You had Omar there. Her daughter goes to school there, obviously. And the purpose that serves is they show up there to normalize the idea that Biden supporters have a place at these protests. And I'm sorry, they fucking do not.
Right.
They do not.
Right.
If you are going to go around, if you're going to spend the next 5 to 6 months taking photos like this and telling people how important it is to Joe Biden, you have no place at these protests either. And you are an infiltrator just as much as the Zionists are. You really are.
Absolutely. And I hope that as these kids are getting for real woke, not the bullshit woke, for real woke, seeing what the face of the state truly is and what they will truly protect, literally to the death, even against members of their class in good standing, as most of the students at Columbia would be. I hope they start doing that because, again, back in the Vietnam era, they turned on Johnson. Eventually, they did start to go after the Democrats. It's very interesting that you got a convention in Chicago this year, which I will be attending with Nick and with Kit from Harlan's Media, and we'll see what kind of shit goes down there. All right, this video is going to make you furious. Israel quickly went from this, from Mohammed Shahada. Israel quickly went from, we never dug those mass graves at the hospital, to everyone in those mass graves we dug were terrorists, terroristically terrorizing the terrorized before the terrorized slaughtered the terrorists. Okay, it's about that bad.
At least 283 corpses found in a mass grave at Nassir Hospital in Khan Yunis. The UN Human Rights Chief has said he is absolutely horrified. Who do you think those bodies are?
Probably terrorists, because the ratio of combatant to innocent that Israel has is unprecedented in modern warfare.
Okay, I just want to point this out. This is the bullshit line they're pushing this week. They've gone all the way back from what was pretty well established. Journalists have never been killed at this rate in any war, including World War II. You've never seen medical workers killed at this rate, and you've never seen children killed at this rate. They've gone right back to the world's most moral army bullshit, where based on nothing that I'm aware of, no actual study I'm aware of, no actual evidence I'm aware of, they've gone right back to the most moral army. We have our fighters to civilian ratio is unprecedented. Absolutely no evidence. They're going right back to claiming tens of thousands of these people who have been killed are actually Hamas fighters. Very few civilians. Based on nothing that I've seen. Have you seen anything, Keaton, to actually prove this? Because they're really pushing this line this week.
No, I mean, it's mathematically impossible. Like, not only is it
women and children, 70%.
70% women and children, so that's 20-something thousand dead right there. Hamas as an organization, according to Israel itself, is only 25,000 members.
Right.
So it is mathematically impossible that what she's saying is even close to true. Right? It's like not even in the ballpark of being true.
Right. But they are all pushing this line this week on the theory. If you keep repeating it, it muddies the waters. That's what this is all about. Muddy the waters.
We know we've killed about 15,000 terrorists. There was a terrible battle in those areas. So the chances
are... How do you think these people died?
In gun battles with Israel.
Why do you think some of the bodies were found with ties around their hands?
Well, because we probably arrested the terrorists.
And then killed them.
Well, I don't know if the terrorists fought back. I wasn't there. But all I can tell you is that this has been a very difficult urban warfare, that nobody on earth has experienced this type of warfare, where the terrorists are hiding in tunnels, where they're cowards because they won't face their enemy. They just leave innocent people up there whilst they hide in tunnels that are bigger than the London Underground. And they come out, they shoot, and it could be that many of them were shot and they were shooting in a battle. And it could be that there were bombs thrown by them and grenades. There could be a million different scenarios of why these were found.
No, there cannot be a million. I'm sorry, can you pause it for a second? There cannot be a million different scenarios because their hands were tied behind their back. What do you mean they may have fought back and thrown bombs?
They were kicking very
She even said herself, she says they
threateningly.
were arrested. They were arrested. That's why their hands are tied behind their back. Well, then why were they shot? Maybe they fought back. How? Their hands are tied. Are they going to throw bombs? Their hands, how are they going to shoot? They can't do anything. There's not a million different scenarios. There's actually very few plausible scenarios that would justify an execution when you have someone's hand tied behind their back. In fact, I can't think of one off the top of my head.
Well, in regards to what you were saying before, she gave a number. We've killed 15,000 fighters. That's impossible. 70% are women and children. That's 20,000 right there. So what are you talking about? The other, everyone who was not a woman or a child was Hamas? So every male was Hamas. Is that where?
That's impossible, too.
Is that
But
where she's getting this from?
Even if you grant them that, there's nowhere near tens of thousands. Right.
Just amazing. But they're used to getting away with this. That's what we saw with the finance minister when for a second Joe Scarborough was told by his owners that he could go after the Israelis for a minute because of whatever spat they were having with Biden behind the scenes or the Biden White House. He goes, why were Netanyahu giving money to Qatar? And immediately he deflects to, yes, I agree. It is Qatar is a wolf in sheep's clothing. Yeah. And it was so transparent. He says, no, but they were acting on behalf of the Israeli government. They're used to being able to just get away with shit like that because when do they get pushback? When have they gotten pushback? Okay.
I just to clarify for me, if you would, how do they fight back with their hands tied behind their backs?
Well, we don't know what they were doing before their hands were tied behind their backs.
She thought the same thing, like minds. How do you, what a hard question that was to come up with.
And this is Sky News. This is not even like a kind of lefty
it's not even a real news
network,
station, right? Yeah, it's like the New York Post.
No, but if you managed to cable tie them, they shouldn't, shouldn't subsequently find them dead, should we?
And maybe again, we're just conjecturing. Maybe his friend threw a grenade, and then what happens? Maybe there was a missile. Maybe they threw a rocket, and then what happens? Again, this is conjecture. I wasn't there. You weren't there. We can't know. All I know is that our army has the highest.
There was Amnesty International, and they say there's.
Yeah. Okay. I mean,
maybe they had one of those robot flamethrower dogs that are coming to the United States now.
Probably. Yeah. Like she's trying now to say maybe their friend threw a grenade. It's just come on, man. So it's going to be very interesting how this plays out because. Really, we haven't had anything like this since Vietnam, where you've got war crimes and the reason you haven't had it is after Vietnam, they started embedding reporters. They learned their lesson. Just letting reporters free roam around Vietnam and broadcast that footage for the United States seriously undermines support. Most people are not fucking monsters. They do not like seeing children incinerated in napalm. You show them things like that, they're usually going to have qualms about it, no matter what propaganda you feed them. Now, because of social media, there's a workaround to the way the control they got over the press. And as a result, you're seeing just these absolute fucking monsters justifying the most horrible, evil crimes against humanity you can imagine. And it's just not working even on a conservative anchor like that. So to what you were saying, yeah, I mean, maybe there's some hope, right? Because even in the midst of this full court press, you still have CNN wrote the article we based this segment on, right? So they didn't completely retreat. They didn't completely give in to the, what are they called? Hasbara, their propaganda? Yeah. Hasbara.
No, look, I mean, I'm confident that we won't give up, and I'm confident that, we'll win again, just like we won the first time in terms of swinging the public mind. But, there is the factor of the calendar, and there's a time clock. Netanyahu claims he has set a date, for a ground invasion of Rafah, right? And it was always unlikely that anything anybody could do would actually save Gaza, which is a horrible thing to say. But I'm not about giving people false hope. I just have to say what I think is true. But there will be justice for this. I'm fairly certain of that, and I know that seems unlikely too at times like this. But you are seeing chinks in the armor to the point where is this going to sustain itself over a period of time? Even the children of the upper class. I mean, that's what's significant about the campus revolts. That, you know, we're not talking about, you know, a SUNY school here or there, or UC Berkeley. You're talking about Yale. You're talking about Columbia, right? Even Harvard. You know, that hasn't been reported as much, but there have been student protests there. MIT, UPenn. These are the people who are supposed to grow up to be the scumbag politicians who are trying to silence them. So if they wake up, what happens 10, 20, 30 years down the road? It's not a pretty picture for Israel in the long term. And so we just have to keep that in our minds as we go through this.
Well, and just to end on a positive note, those protests at Columbia in the Vietnam era did indeed end with Columbia divesting itself of its connection to weapons manufacturers, which was the main student demand. And they won on every front. They changed their policy on the gym in Harlem as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's another thing. I mean, it's easy to lose sight of that, but the short-term demand of these protests is divestment on the part of their schools.
Right.
So why can't you just do it? Like, why can't you just do that? Right? Why? We're not going to do that. We're not going to divest from a genocide. We're going to send the cops in to beat the shit out of the kids. Right. Come on. How much longer can you really keep that going?
Right. We have to focus on these concrete demands. Our objective here in America, in the West, around the world, needs to be to make Israel a pariah and to cut off all of its ties with the world economically and militarily. That is where we have to focus our efforts. That is where we'll have the greatest impact, I think.
Yep, agreed.
Misha, to you.
If I were Rabbi Shmuley and diddle-diddle-diddle-diddle-diddle-dum, all day long I'd diddle little bums. If I were a Shmuley man, I'd peddle all my dildos, dreidel dildos, selling dildos with my daughter and her mum. If I were a a Jewish mooly man, I'd be digging with a dildo in my bum. I'd wear a grotesque nose and go grab some goyim right on the nipple with a pinch. A Shabbos lap dance brace for the youngest mensch.
On a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you hate shitty coffee? I, for one, really hate shitty coffee, which is why I'm excited to introduce to you a company that's revolting against shitty coffee, and it's called the 1775 Coffee Company. Now, I haven't had it yet because I only drink decaf. Steph has had it. Steph, how do you like it?
I really like it. I've been, you know what? I have a French press, and so I've been using my French press and totally enjoying it. It's delicious. It's smooth. It's smooth.
So 1775, the world in 1775, the world awakened to a new era. And now it's 1775 Coffee Company is bringing you a coffee that embodies that revolutionary spirit. Crafted with passion and precision, our beans are ethically and exclusively sourced from the finest coffee beans farms of Bolivia. Didn't know that. 1775 Coffee Company's farm-to-cup journey ensures the highest quality of authenticity and sustainability from start to finish. With each sip, your palate will recognize and appreciate the dedication and passion that goes into crafting this single-sourced brew. 1775 Coffee Company takes pride in offering customers a truly exceptional coffee experience with their premium coffee collection. But their dedication to this revolution extends beyond the realm of taste. Safeguarding freedom of speech is critical right now, which is why 1775 Coffee Company has joined forces with Rumble in defense of one of our most fundamental rights, freedom of speech. Coffee that's sure to awaken all your senses, including the sense of freedom. So choose 1775 Coffee by going to 1775coffee.com/litter. That's LITTER, and use the code LITTER for 10% off the checkout on your first order. 1775 Coffee, brewed to perfection, crafted with revolution.